Tomi Lahren did one of her goofy final thoughts segments on the Tide Pod Challenge. For those of you who don't know what that is, there are some idiots who ate Tide Pods to get video views. But of course, Tomi Lahren decided to take this issue and use it for a hacky partisan rant where she bashes the left.
It's time for final thoughts on our younger generation. You know, we take a lot of grief for being lazy and entitled, and that may be true, but we're also inventive. We've come up with new ways of doing things like the sharing economy, dating apps, social media platforms, and some not so great things like, well, eating laundry detergent. If you haven't heard of the Tide Pod Challenge, it's pretty simple. Teens video themselves eating laundry detergent, then post it online. Yeah, welcome to 2018. Doctors, psychologists, and poison control experts are warning kids and parents of the dangers of, yes, apparently it needs to be said, eating laundry detergent. Article after article explaining what happens when a person ingests laundry detergent.
It's a super high concentration of soap detergents. That could be caustic. And what I mean by caustic is it can burn your esophagus or your feeding tube. It could also burn your airway or your breathing tubes. For an adult to try this, or a teen to try this, I'm trying to think if there's been anything dumber.
Not only is it insanely dumb, it's downright pathetic. This isn't a social media problem, a Tide problem, or even a medical problem. It's a parenting problem, like many things wrong with modern society. And I know what you're thinking. The Tide Pod Challenge couldn't possibly be political, could it? Actually, yes it is. It's just the latest symptom of a larger problem, the breakdown of the American family. It's what happens when kids aren't taught boundaries, respect, consequences, or logic. Parents nowadays are taught to live and let live. Just go with the flow. Let your teens express themselves. But this modern, loosey-goosey method of parenting doesn't teach kids right from wrong or sane from insane. It produces wild animals that think they can do whatever the heck they want and get away with it. Parents used to wash their kids' mouths out with soap, and now kids are voluntarily eating it. Is this really where we are? Pay attention, parents, and do better. Social media addiction is another major issue. These teens surely know it's not smart to eat detergent, but because their value and self-worth is determined by video views and Instagram likes, they do it anyway. Now the left, which dictates popular culture, brainwashes young people into believing they live in a world where 64 gender options are up for selection, everything is free, Beyonce is a god queen, and eating detergent is funny. Americans, we are better than this. Put down the soap, kids, and get a job. Those are my final thoughts from LA. God bless, and take care.
Tomi Lahren's success is based on the fact that she does rants that an 80-year-old guy would do. An 80-year-old far-right Republican guy would do, but she's a young, attractive female. So there's nothing Fox News loves more than that. If you give them a gay person who will bash gay people, or a black person who would bash black people, or a young blonde girl who sounds like an 80-year-old man, they're like, oh, let me shell out millions of dollars for you. Because to them, that justifies their narrative. And what you have is Tomi Lahren bashing millennials. Nothing old people who lean to the right love more than bashing millennials. But also she's putting the blame squarely on the left for the Tide Pod Challenge. Based on what? Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, I'm sure there was a rigorous, in-depth study or poll that was done where they found out the political leanings of people who took the Tide Pod Challenge. Get the fuck out of here. She has no idea the political leanings of people who did the Tide Pod Challenge. I'd venture to guess that if people are eating detergent, they're probably not really politically involved either way. Now, maybe I'm wrong in that guess, but at least I acknowledge when I'm fucking guessing. She just goes out there and states it like it's a fucking fact. Like, oh, final thoughts. The left is responsible for people eating detergent. Oh, fucking genius. How brilliant. You're such a deep thinker, Tommy. Fucking philosopher. And then I like how she goes to the breakdown of the American family. The fuck does that have to do with any of this? And let's be clear, nobody knows the extent of this problem. I've seen a lot of, and I'm sure you guys have too, there were public service announcements, hey, don't eat the Tide Pods, and there were some short videos on it where people say, hey, you shouldn't do this, but I haven't seen that many examples of anybody actually doing it. I'm sure some people did it, but it's not nearly as many as people are making it out to be. I mean, they're making it seem like fucking 50% of the millennial generation is like, where's the detergent? I must eat it. That's not happening. You take a tiny, less than 1% of the population being idiots, and Tommy's like, oh, fucking leftists and millennials, am I right? How fucking stupid are these people? Aren't old right-wingers great? That's what she's doing. Again, hacky partisan rant where she's taking something that has nothing to do with politics and she's like, let me just fucking make this as political as possible because that's all I do is I act like my side is great and the other side is fucking terrible. And then think about that point for a second too, because this is a point I've heard time and time again of like, oh, the breakdown of the American family and these goddamn kids aren't taught how to act in society, and that's the problem, is that they, parents are so lax and they let the kids get away with anything. But hold on now. So think about this. In the 1950s, you had it was a very Leave It to Beaver-ish generation where you had, the nuclear family, and the dad goes to work wearing the suit and tie, and the wife stays home and cooks, and, you got the dog and the 2 kids and the picket fence and yada yada. But it was the 1950s. They birthed a generation that were one of the most rebellious generations. So, by and large, kids in the 1950s grew up in a more strict household that Tomi Lahren likes. But they didn't grow up to be like their parents and be very reserved and traditional and, down the line where the dad goes to work, mom stays home and cooks and all that stuff. They were raised in that environment, but so many of them rebelled. So the idea of like, just go back to that, and then that fixes everything. Well, no, we had that, and then it led to a very rebellious generation. Look at what was going on in the 70s. Everybody was doing acid and fucking in public, and there was a hippie revolution, and fucking rock and roll music and shit, and protesting the Vietnam War. So all the things that you hate came out of a generation that was parenting like you want them to parent. So she doesn't think these things through. It's just fucking empty talking points. Breakdown of the American family is responsible for a lot of the problems in the world today. I think everybody needs to understand that. And then the opposite can happen too, where you have more lenient parents, and then they give birth to a generation that's more reserved and traditional, if you will. So she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. And then finally, I love how she had to slip in a knock on the gender options. What the fuck does that have to do with eating detergent? It's got nothing to do with it. Non sequitur. Hello, how are you? And then everything is free. So this generation thinks everything's free. Everything is... What the fuck are you talking about? Yes, the millennial generation is left-leaning, but they're not asking for anything that every other modern nation doesn't already have. Yeah, they want free college. Fucking Slovakia has free college. Is Slovakia or Slovenia? Sorry, I forget. Maybe it's both. I'm pretty sure if they can do it, we can do it. Pretty sure. We could have gotten free college with just the increase in the military budget that we just had this year. We could have paid for free college, but no, they didn't want to do that. They just add $100 billion to the military budget, even though we already spend more than the next 9 biggest militaries combined. Healthcare. Every other developed country has free healthcare, single-payer healthcare. She's mocking you for wanting what every other modern nation has. Well, that shows you her whole shtick. Her whole shtick is deny reality, don't care about the political issues and making people's lives better. Let me just stand up here and do a partisan rant that old right-leaning dudes will love about how, oh my God, aren't Republicans awesome and aren't Democrats stupid and don't leftists eat detergent all day? That's all this is. Hacky, partisan silliness that the base eats up.